back to the Backyard Professor Chess videos. I have had a frustrating day today with other things besides chess. One thing I've been wanting to try to get to video this next game, and lots of distractions. That's the essence of life, right? The Giuoco Piano is really interesting. My good friend John Cordisco, he also makes chess videos. Oh man, I can't remember the URL. I'll get that for you. He writes comments on my videos all the time. You can just link to his, push the button on his name and you can get to his videos. He mentioned that he was watching some Blitz championship games, and Nigel Short is using the Giuoco Piano a lot, which is really fun to know. In this particular game, we're going to look at one that's played with more depth. I'm going to take a little bit more time and explain. There are all kinds of interesting nuances with virtually every chess opening. I mean, there is no such thing as an absolute unique chess opening that only gives a specific insight and no others do that. This particular game, they matched the knights, and the bishop comes up to c4, and now immediately knight takes the e4. So now we see the strike real quick without necessarily moving any other central pawn. So each game is unique in the Giuoco Piano, and so this is very, very interesting to see. Knight c3. Then the knight takes the knight too. This knight is on a rampage, man. Now here, what's interesting is the d-pawn took the knight. Now Nimzovich, in his book My System and the Praxis of My System, excellent books by the way, I'd highly recommend them. He suggests taking it with this pawn taking toward the center as opposed to this way. However, this does hit a central square. What this does though is it does open up the queen file in case the d-pawn ever gets exchanged, then the queens are facing each other. Right? So this is interesting. Now the bishop comes up here to d6. As a general rule, he's blocking his own pawn, his own central pawn. I personally don't like this move as much, but be that as it may, he made it. Now knight comes up here to g5. He's moving a piece twice. He's getting something going. Queen comes right up here to f6. He's got the knight protected with the bishop, of course. And of course, he's going to hit. He was looking to go to this f7 with that knight. And this is why the bishop came out. Or I mean, the queen came out, but of course. Now, interestingly, the bishop goes ahead and takes the f7 anyway. In the Giuoco Piano, the weak square for black to watch is the f7. I've shown in several other games that black has difficulty castling in the Giuoco Piano. White has the advantage because of the way the bishop comes up here and hits this weak f7 and the nature of the development of the situation. Black just seems to have a tougher time. Well, now here we see him put into check, and of course the queen cannot take that bishop because of the knight. The queen cannot take the knight because of the bishop. So this is a pretty good setup. So he has already, early in the game, virtually forced the king to move. So there will be no castling for black. What does this tell us? King in the center. Now white needs to play aggressive, right? Go after the king. This is the idea in a general sort of way. And we'll see just how white does go after the king. Now the bishop comes back to c4. He didn't stay here. He came back. He's accomplished his goal. Bringing out his rook, putting the queen on a very strong open file. Again, you see the theme of open file, and of course it's the highway to this. Now see, the f2 is the weak square for white. f7 for black, f2 for white. So black is apparently thinking, oh, well, hey, you did it to me, I'm going to do it to you now. So white's going to have to pay attention to this. What he does, he prevents this by simply castling. So now white got to castle, and he's going to kick, black is going to kick the knight off here, but instead knight comes up here to h7, and look at that beautiful knight fork. That's a spectacular tactic. This is a great move by white. Ouch. The queen dodges up here to h4. The pawn is in the way from the queen coming down here and going checkmate. Only 1-2 moves away from a checkmate, though, so white has to keep on his toes, right? Well, of course, anytime you can get a rook, get a rook. And he did. Queen comes over here, though, and takes the bishop. So you got a rook for a bishop. So that's a pretty good exchange for the white player. That was a pretty razzle-dazzle move by the black queen to do this. Now knight comes back up to g6. Keep these pawns in check, apparently. Queen's going to come over here to e4, possibly knocking on the door here, although there's no other pieces out. His central pawn is kind of blocking the angles. Black's whole queen side is undeveloped, isn't it? And white isn't exactly developing super fast either. That's kind of interesting to see that. Well, white comes up here to queen h5. Very strong move. Black's going to start opening up with c5. I'm not quite sure, though. I mean, it doesn't open up for the bishop, and you don't need it for the knight, but he does need to have some central power. He's guarding the d4 square, so he's coming up and influencing the center with this. Now watch what white does. Now, when you castle, one option in the middle game that sometimes really gives you good power is to press this f pawn toward the center. You not only challenge the e pawn, but you possibly open up that open file for the rook that has been castled. So this is a very effective plan. You are influencing the center, and you are potentially empowering your rook with an open file. That's not a bad move. That's really not a bad move. And now the knight does come out. Now they're bringing out more and more of the army, and the f-pawn does take the e-pawn. The knight takes the pawn. This is a very, very interesting exchange coming up here. Look at the development. Bishop brings that white brings out his bishop to f4, and now you can see all kinds of potential exchanges with the powers. So they're going to thin out. You can see the center is really coagulated with a lot of pieces in activity, right? This is very interesting. Queen comes down here and takes the knight on g6, exchanges the queen. The knight takes the queen. The bishop, no. Yes, the bishop takes the bishop. That's correct. My writing sucks, you know. And now, a5. Now, what's the idea here with black? He can see that the bishop is hemming in the white square bishop here by blocking off that pawn. Most of the exchanges have taken black's development away, right? You have a knight over here virtually doing nothing at the moment because it's been busy with the exchange. So black has to bring out the rest of his material. He can't do so through the center because that pawn's blocked by the white bishop, right? So he's going to open up the file and attempt to use a partial file to get his rook into this game. It also opens up, it will, if he pushes that knight pawn, it'll open up a chance for him to get out his bishop as well. But he has to do something because that corner just seems blocked in by one bishop. Isn't that fascinating how that's doing that? We have the two rooks and the bishop and the knight and the bishop and the rook, and these two rooks could be seriously potentially fatal because look at the center. It is wide open highway for king hunting, and the king is in the center of the board. These are some of the things you want to learn how to look, and you get it through experience, playing a lot of chess games, of course. So this is the reason, I think, why he was doing this. The rook comes up here to f7. Now, you know, the rook's on the open file, and one of the places that rooks really love to go is that 7th rank. And this is powerful. That really begins to dominate the game because he has so many central open files, and he's got both of his rooks. And now he starts taking control of the files of the deep in black territory. This is getting very strong very fast. Well, the rook simply comes to here. No, I'm sorry. I thought that said B. Rook comes to A6. Of course, that makes much better sense. Yeah, that's a 6. Rook to A6. And of course that makes perfect sense because he has to start coming out so that he can influence, and he is directly influencing this bishop, which is holding in that pawn. Now, the interesting thing is the bishop is holding off the king, and the checkmate can be delivered by the rook at f8 if it wasn't for this knight. So, I mean, white is just breathing down Black's neck. This is a very interesting idea, and of course, we knew we were going to see this other rook, which is just beautifully logical. Don't try to continue to meander with just this and just this. If you do have another power, by all means bring it out. And he puts it right here on the D file. H is going to come to 5, and rook takes the G7. And it's at this point that Black resigned. And the note was that he cannot prevent rook to G8 checkmate. Now it is Black's move, and he could take the bishop. So that does prevent the checkmate, but it costs him the rook. And it's just too much. 2 rooks, and his pawns aren't really coordinated. He's got a single pawn out here he's going to have to protect. And it was too much, so he resigned. So there is a Giuoco Piano that it showed some interesting tactics, and it showed some interesting variations and themes. And what I want to do with the next couple of videos is do a better, well, I say better, a more in-depth, which is a more in-depth analysis on the various pointers in the Giuoco Piano. So thanks for watching my videos. Thanks for all your nice words. It's a blast being back. It's fun to gab at you in the comments as I can. Don't be discouraged if I don't get a comment to you immediately. I've got a lot on my plate, but I'm trying to work through things. John Cortisco mentioned that along with the Giuoco Piano is the 4 Knights game, and I actually think he makes a lot of sense when he says that. So I may very well, after I do a couple more videos with the Giuoco Piano, I think I will begin to do the 4 Knights opening, and then we can jump from that, of course, to the Ruy Lopez, which is virtually one of the great openings, the Spanish. And I mean, you've got 100 pages of different variations just to memorize, just to get to where you can play the Grandmasters with Ruy Lopez. It's a huge opening, and there is constant new information coming out about it. I mean, Bobby Fischer being an E4 playing guy as white, opening with only the king pawn, except that one tournament game. I can't remember, was it against Petrosian, or it wasn't against Tal. I think it was in the candidates match. I'll have to double check that, but he really blew everybody's mind. I mean, it made news around the world instantly. Bobby Fischer plays Queen 4? Pawn Queen 4? He always opened with the king pawn, so he had to know the Ruy Lopez, the Giuoco Piano, various other openings like that. So anyway, have a great life, and I will see you guys in the next video.